Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another video. We're back with more Fighters Ambition reveals, and today we're talking about the Villainous Magenta deck, which is kind of interesting in a few ways, some good, some bad. We'll just jump right into it because we have a lot of cards to read, but if you guys are new here, it would really help me out if you were to subscribe, maybe hit the notification bell if you're new so you never miss a Dragon Ball Super video. Anyways, let's just jump right on in. We are starting with the Magenta leader. So permanent, you can't include non-villainous cards in your deck and treat villainous cards in your hand as if they had no specified cost. So the deck is essentially colorless, but the way I understand this is the permanent means you can literally only include cards in your deck that say villainous on them. So that's actually pretty restrictive. You can't play extra cards. There's no secret rare that has villainous on it as far as I remember, so you can't play a secret rare. This is very restrictive for deck building. Maybe that's more so for thematic reasons than anything else, but it definitely hinders the deck in quite a few ways. But they printed a lot of villainous cards in this set. There are really old villainous cards you can take a look at for this deck, but honestly they work in like these weird duo pairs with their heroic counterparts, so they're probably not all that good. The only one that's really kind of playable is the Android 21 that serves as a board wipe for low cost battle cards, so that's decent. I'm pretty sure this doesn't apply to your Z deck though, because that ruling was reversed where you can play cards in your Z deck that don't reflect, you know, any leader restrictions your leader might have. So at least your Z deck is open up to some things, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, this deck is going to be pretty weird to build in the sense that you can only include villainous cards. But let's see if there's enough here to make a valid deck, because there's a lot of villainous cards here. So once card attacks, look at the top 5 of your deck, add up to 1 villainous card once in your hand, and then shuffle your deck. Awaken your life 4 or less, or 2 or more villainous cards during your energy. You may draw 2, add cards from life to hand until you have 6 life left. Magenta, World Within Grasp. We have permanent, treat villainous cards in your hands if they have no specified cost. When it attacks, draw 1 and activate main once per turn. Pay an energy, play 1 villainous card with energy cost that is less than or equal to your current energy from your hand. So yeah, you have to cheat out any basically on curve villainous for that turn for 1 energy, and some of the other villainous have effects that cheat themselves out, so that does lead to some interesting turns. And this is basically gonna be a hand control deck, because we're gonna see what villainous does right now. If you don't know, it's so funny that they have to re-explain what villainous does here, because we haven't seen it in such a long time. Usually the set that a keyword comes out in, they have the explanatory text attached to it, and you just never see the explanatory text again, because at that point you're assumed to know what it does. But we haven't seen this text in so long, they wrote on every card, which I think is pretty funny. So Villainous, when you play another villainous battle card or activate a villainous extra skill, your opponent discards a card from their hand and then negate this skill for the turn. So basically, while you control a villainous battle card, every time you play a new one, the one you already control procs to make your opponent discard a card. So if you have 3 villainous battle cards and play a 4th one, your opponent will discard 3 cards. That's generally how it works. So we have King Garuma's Villainous Threat. We have a 1-drop 4K. Auto, when this card's played, you may draw 1 card. If you do, negate this card's skills for the game. So the way that seems to work is, if you want to play this as a 1-drop cantrip, you can, but then you can't use the villainous on it anymore, which I guess is a balancing act they implemented here. When you activate this card's villainous, negate this card's skills for the game. So yeah, basically same thing. You have to choose if you want to treat it as a cantrip or if you want to treat it as a 1-cost villainous enabler. Mercenary Tau, Villainous Threat, 1-drop auto. When this card's played, look at the top 5, add a villainous card, shuffle your deck, and if you added a card to your hand, negate this skill for the game. And then same thing, if you activate this card's villainous, negate this card's skills for the game. I don't know if these would have been too OP if they would have just been allowed to do both, like, you know, be the cantrip that they are and proc villainous. I think it would have been fine considering how restrictive this deck is in deck building, but I mean, again, just simple balancing. I gotta say too that the artwork on all these cards is super cool. Like the, you know, the paint splashes and stuff is very, very neat. So of course, some of these are going to be usable in other decks, not so much the Tau and the Garumis, but let's look at Golden Frieza, Villainous Threat. 2-drop 15k counter attack, negate the attack, and if there are 1 or fewer villainous cards in your battle area, play this card. And then permanent, during your opponent's turn, reduce energy cost of this card in your hand by 1. Now normally you can't reduce the cost of a battle card past its specified cost, which in the case of Frieza is the 2 yellow dots, but since the leader ignores specified cost, you can just remove those yellow dots altogether, and this card can be a 1 cost in this deck. I kind of wish it was just a 1 specified cost yellow card, because that would have opened up some playability in some other yellow decks, like namely Set 1 Golden Frieza. This would have been a great card to counterattack with, and then, you know, sacrifice for your leader effect to do some things, and maybe you could have splashed some villainous stuff, but this one is not very splashable outside this leader, unfortunately. Then we have Bio Broly, Villainous Threat. We have a 3-drop 20k, unique, dual attack, and then auto limit 1. When this card's KO'd, play this card from your drop in rest mode. So there is one problem with this card. Like, this leader can cheat it out, but This doesn't actually serve as Broly support from what I've seen, because the green Broly leader doesn't KO, it just places in the drop, so that wouldn't proc this guy's auto to revive himself. Would have been pretty good support for that archetype, especially considering I think you have to pay 3 for this in that deck. I don't think they have a way to cheat out 3-cost Bio Broly, but maybe they do. I can't completely remember, but still, I mean, it's kind of weird. They created this card to not really have synergy with its intended archetype, but again, it works decently in this deck. Garlic Jr. Villainous Threat, 3-drop, activate main, limit 1 for a yellow. If Makio stars in your battle area, play this card from your hand, and of course it has Villainous and Indestructible. So yeah, this card is meant for the Garlic Jr. deck, which I think you can then evolve over this, so it's a very simple Garlic to put in play. That deck is a really cool one because it has a lot of neat battle tricks and interruptions. The boss monster is kind of cool as well, but its biggest problem is red, because while Indestructible is a really good form of protection against most colors, it's just unfortunately bad against red because they can minus things off the board fairly easily. Although I will say Gogeta is one of the decks that doesn't have a ton of minus ability. Like looking at U7, for example, when that was meta, that deck's able to play a 4-cost board wipe that minuses the whole board by like 35k, if I remember correctly. Gogeta doesn't have the same insane minusing ability. You've got the red-black Gogeta you can of course play. But yeah, maybe some Indestructible stuff can come back since Gogeta is the arguable best red deck and doesn't have a full 35k, you know, minusing board wipe. Just a sort of a side tangent. But anyways, Lord Slug, Villainous Threat, 3-drop 20k, double strike, permanent bond 2. His card gets plus 5k. When this card's played, choose one of your opponent's battle cards in rest mode and KO it, so you get a bit of removal in the deck. And then if your leader's a yellow Lord Slug, when this card's using the combo, choose one of your opponent's battle cards in rest mode that isn't attacking and KO it. So that's some just straight support for the actual Slug deck. Again, decent card. Being a 1-drop 10k in this deck might be a bit clunky if you're tapping out a lot, which I kind of assume you will be doing to play a bunch of your threats and make your opponent discard cards. But yeah, still an option. Then we have SS Broly, Villainous Threat, 5-drop 25k, deflect, unique, dual attack, auto. When this card's played during your opponent's next turn, reduce energy cost of the first extra you activate from under one of your Broly VR cards by a green. Of course, that doesn't really matter for this deck at all, but it is a neat tool for the green Broly deck. Then we have auto. When this card attacks, choose one of your opponent's battle cards and KO it, which is good in this deck for the dual attack. That's not a once per turn auto. Then the activate main here allows you to play it in the Broly deck, but we're playing it for 1 energy on turn 5. If we actually even choose to play this card in the Magenta deck, because I think getting to turn 5 is maybe a bit of a generous ask. So this card might not be the way to go in the actual Magenta deck itself. Turles, Villainous Threat, 3-drop 20k. We have activate main / battle, limit 1 for any color energy. If it's your turn, there are 2 more Villainous and or Turles Crusher Core cards in your battle area and or combo area. Play this card from your hand. So this is kind of neat because it's a green card, but it's also open to being played in the yellow Turles deck as long as you fulfill the requirements. But yeah, in this deck, this is one of the Villainous threats you want to play that doesn't require you to use your leader's activate main, because you know your leader's activate main on the awakened side can only be used once per turn. So you want to play a threat using that and then play a card like this that can also be played for 1 energy, proc Villainous, swing for 20k, that kind of thing. Then we have Hurrigarn, Villainous Threat. It's a barrier. Auto, when this card attacks, choose one of your opponent's battle cards and place on top of the owner's deck. And then auto, switch this card to rest mode at the end of your turn. Switch one of your energy to active mode. So if you want to be defensive, you wouldn't swing with this card. But if you do want to swing with it, you do get to remove a battle card and stunt your opponent's next draw, which is not too bad. Bojack, Villainous Threat, 3-drop 15k, unique, auto limit 1 for an energy. If your leader's a Magenta superhero or Bojack Brigade and it's your turn, at the end of a battle where you use this card from your hand or energy in a combo, play this card from your drop. So offensively, you can play it for 1, just like we were talking about with Turles. Auto, when this card's played, choose one of your opponent's battle cards with energy cost greater than or equal to their current energy and return it to the owner's hand. So a bit of removal there. You can play this one a bit early because I don't remember seeing an energy restriction on it. So a pretty decent option for getting your procs early for Villainous. Demba, Villainous Threat, 2-drop 15k, activate main limit 1. If your opponent has 2 or more energy, you return one of your evil incarnates or 2 of your Villainous cards, none of which have the same name as this card, to your hand. Play this card from your hand. That's kind of a little bit costly, I think, returning 2 Villainous, but then again, you could return your Mercenary Tau or your King Garumis, so maybe you want to bounce those back to reuse them. And again, this is one you can play relatively early, especially if you were spamming out those 1-drops early on, so maybe this is actually a pretty good card for the deck. Then we have Red Ribbon Robot, Villainous Threat, 4-drop 25k, auto limit 1. If it's your turn and one of your Villainous or Red Ribbon army cards is removed from your battle area by a skill, play this card from your hand. I think that could have been a free play, and it would have been perfectly fine for the deck. It wouldn't have been too broken, but I mean, I guess free playing a Villainous when you have 3 or 4 Villainous on the board maybe is probably a bit too strong. But active main once per turn, place one of your Villainous or Red Ribbon Army cards in the owner's drop, and this card gains critical for the turn. So I guess you can use this to proc another copy of itself, which is kind of cool. That's kind of a neat little combo. The fact that it has its own ability to play itself for 1, and then your leader can play it for 1 on turn 4, this does seem like a pretty solid card for the deck, I will say. Then we have SS Broly, returning Villainous threat, 4 drop, 25k auto, and this card's played from your hand. It gains triple strike for the turn. So I know a lot of people are sad about this one because the Dormant Legend stuff plays this from the deck, and that wouldn't get the triple strike. That is a little bit unfortunate. Sorry about that, guys. But then auto, if your opponent has 3 or more energy when this card's played, choose all your opponent's battle cards and they get minus 25 for the turn. Not bad. Not bad at all. I mean, you can play this from your hand for 1. You get a board wipe out of it. That's not a bad card to play at all. Then we have Android 13, Villainous threat, 2 drop, 15k auto, and this card's played. Choose one of your opponent's battle cards with 10k power or less and KO it. Activate main limit 1 for the Android 13 red leader. You place this card from your hand under a red android card in your battle area. Return up to 1 red android with an energy cost of 1 from your drop to your hand. So this is kind of cool in the Android 13 deck. I want to talk about it here because I didn't talk about this card in the Android 13 video because it wasn't revealed yet. But this is a way to put another Android 13 under your Android 13 Total Annihilator. And that card has one of its effects, I can't completely remember off the top of my head, but one of its effects is tied to having copies of Android 13 under it. So if you wanted to extend that effect's lifespan, basically, you could tuck this and then recycle an Android from your drop. Although, you know, that 7 drop doesn't really have barrier or anything, so I don't expect it to live going into another turn. So I probably wouldn't play this card in the actual competitive version of the Android 13 deck, but it's still a cool option to have. And then we have Broly Villainous threat, 2 drop, 15k auto, when this card attacks. Choose one of your opponent's battle cards with energy cost of 3 or less and send it to the owner's warp. Activate main limit 1. If your leader's a Broly card, you send this card from your drop to your warp. Return 1 Broly card without super combo with energy cost of 7 or less from your drop to your hand. So in the black Broly leader, I guess actually in any Broly leader, you get to recycle some of your Brolys that you may have milled or may have died earlier in the game. Kind of a cool option. Obviously, it's a black card, so it seems like it's meant to be played in black Broly, which does mill a bit. But yeah, I guess it's also technically for green Broly and even for red Broly if you wanted to play it. Alright, then we have Lucifer, Villainous threat. I wonder why he has Goku's hair. I don't really remember this guy from the movie back in the day. If you guys know about that, let me know in the comments below. But yeah, he's a super combo for the deck. So again, like, you couldn't really just play a black leader super combo here. You would have to have one printed for the deck. So here is that card. If your leader's black and your life's 4 or less, when this card's using the combo, draw 1. Very simple. Beerus Villainous threat. So actually, this is a pretty cool card that they printed here because there's the Beerus Villainous card from like set 8 or whenever they came out. And if you were to play that in this deck, there was no valid Beerus target for him to pick up, but now there is. So this is a 3 drop with Deflect and Offering, and it's just Villainous. So it's kind of like a Villainous vanilla, but playing this for 1, getting Villainous, and making your opponent pick between critting a life or letting you draw 2, that's kind of cool. I honestly can't lie about that. Cooler Villainous threat, 3 drop, 25k auto limit 1. When this card's played, choose 1. Either switch one of your energy to active mode or choose one of your opponent's battle cards and it gets minus 25 for the turn. Again, another cool card for this deck in particular. I don't think Cooler Mill will play this really because you don't have a way to cheat it out, but in this deck you can of course play it for 1. But if the multicolor Villainous are going to be the best cards, that's going to make a really awkward deck because you're not going to have all this energy to combo all these 1 drop 10ks. That's definitely kind of awkward. But got 2 more multicolors to read. Metacooler, Villainous threat, 4 drop 15k, unique, Villainous, permanent. If you have a Villainous card in play, negate this card's energy exhaust in all areas. So at least it's a free check land. Not that you really care about what colors you're charging, but auto, when this card's played from your hand, choose one of your opponent's battle cards with energy cost of 5 or less in rest mode and KO it. Oh, and I just realized you kind of maybe care about what colors you're charging, I guess, for your Z deck. Again, if that restriction doesn't apply to your Z deck. So that is the one thing that might matter. This is cool to give you access to Oolong, I guess. But yeah, we got to see what other Z deck options the deck might feasibly be able to play, given how much Z energy it may or may not actually make. And then Dr. Weiro, Villainous threat, 2 drop 15k auto. When this card's played, choose 1. Either choose one of your opponent's battle cards with energy cost of 2 or less and place it at the bottom of the owner's deck, or choose one of your opponent's unisons and remove 2 markers from it. I do like that this deck has an option for unison marker removal. That is kind of cool. So overall, I know we kind of sped run through all these cards. There are just so many Villainous cards you can jam pack into this deck, and of course your deck has to be fully consistent of Villainous cards, which is definitely, again, a big downside. It is really rough. You can't play a secret rare. That alone kind of chops some competitive viability from this deck. No normal negates. Like, I think the only counter attack you have in the deck is the 4 copies of the Golden Frieza. That's actually definitely pretty rough. No counterplay options. Yeah, competitively, I don't think this deck's going to stack up too well, but I do think you can spam a board pretty effectively, and that's going to get a lot of Villainous procs. So that is kind of interesting, I will say that. But anyways, guys, of course, I want in the comments below what you think about Magenta coming out in set 19. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.